Hi there, and welcome to National Priorities Project's webinar, Corporate Tax Breaks and Tax Reform. I'm Mattia Kramer, Research Director. Tax reform is appearing in the news all the time right now. But what exactly does tax reform mean? Tax reform is the effort to rewrite the tax code, and depending on your perspective, the objective is to make the tax code more efficient, fairer, and more effective at raising revenue. If tax reform seems like an abstract topic that couldn't possibly affect you, let me explain why that idea couldn't be more wrong. Whether it's natural disaster preparedness, early childhood education, Meals on Wheels for seniors, environmental protection, repairs to roads and bridges, or veterans benefits, among many other things, taxes fund programs that you and your community rely on. And tax reform has the potential to ensure that our government raises enough revenue in a way that's fair to provide services that citizens like you overwhelmingly value, according to opinion polls. When the tax code doesn't raise sufficient revenue to fund the government, the result is budget deficits, which become the justification for cutting all kinds of government services. So, yeah, tax reform matters. Okay, now a lot of the talk about tax reform is focused on tax breaks. A tax break is a special reduction in the amount a corporation or individual owes in taxes. There are hundreds of tax breaks in the tax code, resulting in huge savings for certain taxpayers and literally trillions of dollars being diverted from the U.S. Treasury. To be precise, tax breaks added up to about $1.13 trillion in fiscal 2013. And you can see here that tax breaks are about the size of all discretionary spending. That's the part of the federal budget that Congress is supposed to appropriate each year in the budget process. Discretionary spending includes nearly all federal environmental protection, community development, education, and military spending. Some people argue that all these tax breaks are a bad thing because when money is diverted into tax breaks, it can't fund the kind of programs I just mentioned. Others argue that tax breaks are a good thing because that money stays in the pockets of taxpayers. But that brings up the issue of fairness. Who exactly is benefiting from that $1.13 trillion in tax savings? Right now, corporations are taking advantage of about 75 different tax breaks in the tax code for a total of $108 billion in tax breaks in 2013. A hefty portion of that was the tax break that allows corporations to defer paying taxes on profits attributed to overseas operations. That gives corporations an incentive to move profits and jobs overseas so they can save money on taxes. Courtesy of the National Women's Law Center and Americans for Tax Fairness, this graphic asks citizens like you to think about what your priorities are. Over 10 years, corporate tax breaks for offshoring operations will total $606 billion. On the other hand, the federal government could close those tax breaks and spend that money on a plan to modernize infrastructure. The choice is ours as a nation to decide. Corporations aren't the only ones who benefit from tax breaks. Individual taxpayers do too. Consider the tax break for capital gains and dividends. It's a part of our tax code that says income from investments will be taxed at a lower rate than income from wages and salaries. The effect of this tax break is a loss of $83 billion from the U.S. Treasury in 2013 alone, and 68% of that total is savings for the top 1% of households. $83 billion would be enough to more than double the current level of federal spending for all education programs. Again, the choice of what to spend that money on, tax breaks or federal programs, should be ours as a nation to decide. Hopefully by now you've gotten the idea that tax reform isn't just a topic for Washington insiders. This matters for us, regular people, and you can have a say in what happens in Washington. Here you can see the members of Congress who are most involved in tax reform. Believe it or not, your voice can have an influence in this process, because when you contact your own senators and representatives, it makes a difference. You might think they're not listening, but hearing from even a handful of constituents on any given issue can make a big difference because we're the ones with the power to re-elect them to office. Think about your own priorities for this country. Maybe you think certain tax credits or deductions are important, and maybe you think others should be eliminated from the tax code so the government can use that money for other things. Whatever your priorities are, you have the chance right now to let Washington know by being in touch with your legislators. If you have any questions or want to learn more, here's how to contact me, and here's where to access more resources from National Priorities Project. Thanks for joining me.